Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Sort of a bonus video this week. Such a beautiful day today, and I thought I'd shoot a little segment on skiing snowmobile trails. So here we go. Of course, there's lots of different kinds of snowmobile tracks. There's snowmobile highways and there's snowmobile paths. Each of them have their own unique challenges and rewards. When you're skiing in the national forests of western Wyoming or eastern Idaho, snowmobiles are just a fact of life. The chances of having a national forest experience in fresh powder without tracks is really an amazing thing, but it's often rare. While skiing snowmobile trails isn't ideal, it's one way to get out and cross-country ski. If they're flat and they're level, you can just really scoot along on them. Really enjoy the ski. But more often than not, they're neither of those things. They'll be full of great big divots and ruts. If there's a lot of people using them, sometimes they can be noisy and a bit smelly. But that being said, don't let that stop you from getting out. If you want the experience without snowmobiles, unfortunately you're going to be stuck to wilderness areas, which are great, but oftentimes they're remote and not easily accessible from roads, or dedicated areas where the Forest Service has seen fit to prohibit motorized snow vehicles. But out here, those areas are pretty much limited to the national parks and one small area down in the Bridger Forest, which is about 50 miles from where I live. I wish it was different. Well, now I get off my soapbox and I want to talk a little bit about skiing snowmobile trails. One of the most important things about skiing snowmobile trails is safety. And you always need to be thinking in the back of your mind that at any moment, a snowmobile could come at a high rate of speed or up over the top of a knoll or around a blind corner, and they're not going to see you. They're not going to expect you, and that's not going to be a good outcome. So what I do when I'm skiing snowmobile trails is, if it's a blind corner or a hill or something, especially if I hear snow machines in the background, is to move over to the one side or another, make sure they have a good path to get by you. Now this trail right here is probably more typical of the kind of snowmobile trail that a beginning cross-country skier should look for. You shouldn't look for extremely steep or twisting trails. You should stay mainly with Forest Service roads and maybe ATV trails that aren't really steep and aren't dangerous. And you can move on to more difficult terrain when you build up your skill set. One of the first skills that they teach cross-country skiers is how to do the snowplow as a means for control to reduce your speed. It's basically sort of a reverse herringbone, and all you're doing is putting your skis into a wedge position like this. Your tips are angled together, and then essentially you're using the inside edges of your skis, both on your left ski and your right ski. You're using that as a brake. You're pushing the snow away, and it can be fairly effective. It works best, obviously, in a groomed area where you have a really wide track and it's not rough. There's not a lot of undulation. So sometimes it's a difficult technique to use effectively on snowmobile trails. And it takes a little more finesse. It takes a little more effort. But it can be done. This trail is not really wide, but it's not really steep or icy. The snow is soft enough. I think we can go into a snowplow. So let's get some speed up. Let's plane it out. Now that's a would never pass as a classic snowplow. The problem you have with snowplows on snow machine trails is that, you know, they're not necessarily equal width. The snow is not consistent, and trying to get your tails out on a narrow track like this sometimes can be difficult. So it's effective, but sometimes you can't get into the classic pose. But the technique is the same. Okay, so now we're going good, so we're gonna go into this snowplow position. Now if you have soft snow, just going off to the side might be enough just to slow you down. But you can also use just half the snowplow technique. You can keep one of your skis in the soft snow, the other ski out in the snowmobile track, and you can snowplow with that. Let's give that a try. Let's put this ski over here. Now you can see I've got one ski that's going straight, and the other ski is at an angle. I use that technique more than I use a full snowplow. On these kinds of roads and trails, the turns tend to be gentle. There's lots of different kinds of turns that you can use, and probably one of the most efficient one is what's called the step turn. And the step turn is where you just essentially pick up one ski and you reposition it. You pick up the other ski, reposition it, picked up the ski again, reposition it, and pick up the other ski and reposition it. You do that all the time while you're on the move. In most situations, just a gentle step turn is probably appropriate. Now we talk about ski and snowmobile trails and how to control snowmobile trails. One of the options that you need to consider is not checking your speed at all. If it's a gentle slope and it's just actually easier oftentimes to just go ahead, let your skis get up to their maximum speed, let them go down the hill, and then continue on. It takes a little bit of experience to figure out when you should just go ahead and let your skis run and when you should check your speed. It's obviously going to depend an awful lot on your skill level, you know, the angle of the slope, and how fast the conditions are. If you're afraid of falling, the natural reaction is to just slow down. Sometimes the action of trying to slow down will make you fall. Now that's not a license to go crazy down the hills uncontrollably. That's not a good solution either. But every hill that you come to, you need to make an assessment in your head. Is this one that I can just ski down without trying to slow down? Or is it one that I can just comfortably control? Once again, let's go down here. And this curve is so gentle, my skis are just gonna naturally follow around the curve. I really don't have to do much. But if you had to make a step turn, that's essentially what you do. You do a series of steps. Skiing in the backcountry where there's been a lot of snowmobile activity definitely adds another level of complexity to backcountry skiing. I mean, obviously the nicest terrain to ski is untracked slopes, or even slopes that have been tracked up by skiers is much easier to ski than a slope that's been totally obliterated by these snowmobiles. The main reason is skiers tend to ski downhill. Even though they leave ruts and tracks, they tend to be in the same direction and in the same kind of turn pattern that most of us would ski it if we ski it. So it's easy enough to pretty much follow what they've done. But when it comes to snowmobiles, they pretty much have the power to go any place they want to go, any direction they want to go. They go uphill and cut great big divots and leave big berms. It isn't always very conducive to the downhill flow of a cross-country skier. My advice is to avoid them if you possibly can, but where I live, it's actually impossible to avoid them. I do a lot of skiing of terrain that is covered with snowmobile tracks, and it can be tricky. You definitely have to be much more cautious. And obviously, if you try and follow the track down, it might seem like a good idea at first, but you can run into these surprises. And as these snow machines go uphill and they really apply the throttle, they push up these big moguls or berms. And you can imagine, you know, coming down this track and hitting these. how that could really upset anybody's day. Now, when you're on a snowmobile trail, and you're looking at a corner down here, you're not quite sure what's up ahead. It's generally not a good idea to just go blasting down. The best idea is to control your speed so you can see far enough ahead and know whether or not you can continue. When I see a situation like this where I know that there's soft snow on the side and obviously the snowmobile track, the smartest course of action would be just to skip the snowmobile track altogether and make a track beside it. You know, go down beside it, you won't have to deal with all the idiosyncrasies of the snowmobile track. Well, let's just say it's highly treed and you don't have that option. You put one ski off to the side of it and that'll slow you down. And that's what I'm going to show you right here. We're going to ski with one ski in the track and one ski off to the side. And we're going to come down. I can actually use the ski that's outside of the track to sort of snowplow. I can go in and out of the track. Once again, I'm going to go out of the track with one ski. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'm kind of doing sort of a little bit of a snowplow. Now we get down here, it's a little more tricky. With a couple bumps. Let's try this slope again. This time we're going to see if we can stop before we get down to that little tricky section. The best way to stop is to be controlling your speed. The slower you're going, the easier it is to come to a full stop. So if you start picking up too much speed, then it's time to start scrubbing the speed. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my skis out of the snow machine track a little bit. I'm going to make sure my speed is manageable and possibly as slow as it can go. Now this hill here is not super steep, but it's not gentle by any means. Okay, so I see this difficult situation coming up. So I've gone into a snowplow with this foot. You can see where it's out here. Come to a stop. I can stop here and I can assess the situation. If my brain tells me that this slope is not safe for me to go down, I have two choices. Well, actually I have three choices. One of them would be to go off in this direction and go around the hill and come around so I don't have to deal with this. That would be a good option. You wouldn't have to take your skis off. If you didn't have that option, it was completely icy, you know, then obviously you could take your skis off, especially if you can walk easily on it. Just pop them off, walk down the hill. Or you can sidestep down the hill. This is something that people do an awful lot. But the key thing here is you got to be able to stop and you got to be able to assess your situation. Step down the hill till you're comfortable that you can handle the bumps and the lumps. So obviously in this situation, the best course of action is just to skip all this. I see some fresh snow right over here. A little more downhill approach. Let's just bypass all that. Now's the time to think about the tailmark turn. Same slope that they did. Only difference is we're not going to ski their ruts. We're going to control our own turn, our own destiny. And if we have to cross their ruts, we can do that. Find a good place to cross and then cross the ruts again. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to give me a thumbs up and stay tuned for my originally scheduled videos on Fridays. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and be sure to have fun. I know that some of you are eyeing the untracked slopes in the background of this video. Don't worry, I took a little time to check them out myself. The snow machines can't have all the fun.